Today I want to talk about something very special, at least very special to me, and that is communion. Communion is something we do in the Christian church. Some do it every day, some do it once a month, some do it once a quarter, and some do it only on special days. Some churches have a big to-do about it, and some of it, other churches, not so big a to-do. But I want to talk about what it meant to the first Christians and the followers of Jesus as to what Jesus said at the Last Supper, dealing with what we call communion. There are things you have to understand to make sure that this means a lot to you like it does to me. In the Last Supper, Jesus took bread and broke it and blessed it. That is tradition with Jewish meals. The host always takes a loaf of bread, blesses it, breaks it, and passes it on to others. That is tradition. But Jesus added something else. Jesus said, "Take this bread. This is my body, broken for you." What does that mean? Where does it come from? Well, it comes from Genesis chapter 15. Let me summarize what takes place. Abram is told by God to take a bunch of animals, cut them open, and let the blood pool in the middle. This is called the blood covenant. In those days, if two people made an agreement, a covenant, they took an animal, pooled the blood, and they both walked through the blood, saying, "If I break this covenant, you have the right to do the same to me." They were very serious about agreements. But going back to Genesis 15, Abram protected the animals, kept vultures away from it, and in the evening, God walked through the blood and consumed the animals as an offering. Abram did not walk through the blood, only God did. What that meant, if God broke the covenant, which we know he would not, he would have to die. If Abram or his family broke the covenant, God would have to die. And Jesus on the cross, one of the statements that we say in our Bible, "It is finished," the actual words, from what I can gather, was, "The contract is fulfilled," meaning the covenant between Abraham and God in Genesis 15 has been fulfilled, and that a new covenant will take its place. That's why Jesus had to die on the cross. Just think about it for a moment. It's a very serious thing. Then Jesus took the cup after dinner. Actually, it was the third cup of wine. It's called the cup of salvation or the cup of redemption. And he took it and said, "This is my blood of the new covenant." So what is the new covenant? The old covenant, as we just talked about, is fulfilled and no longer in force. So Jesus instituted a new covenant. And you have to go to Jeremiah 31, verses 31 and 32. God says, "I will install a new covenant for you." Now this covenant is called the bridegroom covenant, and it's very significant that Jesus offered a cup of wine. What is the bridegroom covenant? Well, let's put it like this. When a young man sees a girl he wants to marry, he goes to his father and says, "I want to marry so-and-so." The father looks and says, "If she's not from a good family, you cannot marry her. But if she's from a good family, you will marry her." And assuming this young lady's from a good family, the father of the groom goes to the father of the bride and they agreed on a bride price. Once that is done, the father of the groom pours a cup of wine and gives it to his son, who presents it to the young lady. She drinks it, and in doing so, she is saying, I will be your wife. I will be your bride. I will prepare myself to be the best bride I can be, keeping myself pure and ready for the time you will return. And then the son drinks of the cup, and in doing so, he says, I will be your husband, and I will go to my father's house and prepare a place for you. And then they leave. Now, if the boy has his way, he'd throw up a couple 2x4s and said, I'm going to go get my bride. That's not the way it works. The father of the groom inspects the work every day that the groom and his friends do, building a room or a place at his father's house. And when it meets the father's standards and approval, he says to his son, go get your bride. Now, what does this have to do with communion? Well, Jesus said, I go to my Father's house and prepare a place for you. And no one knows the time, not the angels in heaven, not the Son, only the Father knows. So when you take that cup of grape juice or wine or taste it, you are renewing your covenant, your contract with God to be Jesus' bride. And you have to work hard to keep yourself pure and acceptable to God and Jesus. That is what communion is. An ending of an old covenant by Jesus' death on the cross, and a renewing of a new covenant, the bridegroom covenant. So we have to keep ourselves safe and pure and close to God, waiting for Jesus' return to bring his bride home to God. So next time you take communion, whether it's by pieces of bread or in cups of grape juice or wine, or by in tincture, dipping the bread into the cup of wine, it does not matter. You are renewing your covenant to be the bride of Christ. And we need to take this serious, because God takes it very serious. And Jesus is preparing a place for us, and we must prepare ourselves for his return. So next time you take communion, remember this. This is very, very important. That's why communion is so important to me, and should be so very important to all Christians. Think about it, pray about it, remember it. And all God's children said, Amen.